Do you hear me? ASMR. Christian ASMR. Alright. It is wise for us as Christians to ask questions. But there's one question that I personally believe is one of the most powerful questions that we can ask in any circumstance regarding any kind of thing. And if you're new here, what's up? My name is Christian. I make content about mental health, a lot of it based on my own experiences and social issues, all from a biblical perspective, so that you can heal and grow. And if that's your kind of thing, you found your place. And this powerful question that I'm talking about is simply why? And one of the main reasons this question is so incredibly powerful is that it prevents us from taking everything that we see or everything that we observe at face value. For example, a place I really do love to apply this is when it comes to analyzing things like demographics in a given society. For example, if we look at certain statistics without analyzing it, we can really easily assume that Black people and crime go hand in hand. But if we go a little bit deeper, we can understand the why behind each statistic. The why behind certain numbers seem a lot higher than they should be. And if we do go a little bit deeper and dare to ask the question why, then we understand what is actually going on and not just take that thing at face value. And that really ties into the next kind of point, that it encourages us to be a lot more empathetic and see people more than their beliefs or what set of values they seem to be presenting. In Proverbs 15:28, it says, "The heart of the righteous ponders how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil things." So we can see that it is important for us as Christians to think about things before we speak on it, or think about things before we give our response. And I feel like this is something that we definitely could have done a lot better when it came to things like the election, or when it comes to things like analyzing anything within our society. We'll see something and then we'll immediately make a comment on it without ever thinking, why does this thing exist, or why is this thing like this? Thinking about things, pondering them, allows us to be a lot more empathetic because we can see people more than what the certain behaviors are presenting, or more than a certain given value that they seem to have. A really good example of this is that if you see a child crying, right, and throwing a temper tantrum, now some of us would immediately see that and think, okay, that needs to be corrected, and you immediately go straight to discipline. But we also need to think about why that child is crying, because the reason that child could be throwing a temper tantrum could be very much valid. And once you're able to understand the why behind that child having that temper tantrum, then you could address that exact reason rather than just dealing with the outward behavior. And the same kind of thing applies when we see anything in our society. Currently, I'm thinking about, when people are getting really upset about things like DEI or things like affirmative action, right? A lot of the backlash or a lot of the pushback for things like that will be, okay, whoever is the most qualified should get the position. It shouldn't be based off of race or anything like that. And that is true. However, if you look at the history of why DEI is the thing, or affirmative action is a thing, is because that thing was not happening. It wasn't, the most qualified person wasn't getting the role. It was whoever it was the lightest. And this is why it is important for us to ask the question why, because then we can understand why things are in place, and then we can adjust those things so it's more pointed towards perfection. And as Christians, this is something that we should be looking to do, to be more empathetic, because a lot of the times we see someone's behavior and then we just simply see that and nothing else. And it doesn't mean that we ought to give excuses for a certain behavior, but it does mean that we can begin to understand it and then offer a lot more empathy, which in turn then makes us more like Jesus. And when we ask the question why, we can get to the root of certain issues a lot better, because we then can not just take it at face value or just seek a superficial answer. And something Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 7 is, "So every healthy tree bears good fruit, but the diseased tree bears bad fruit. A healthy tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a diseased tree bear good fruit." Now, what's the real importance in the good tree, the bad tree, the rotten fruit, the good fruit? What's the importance here? And specifically, how does it apply to this whole wanting to know things deeper? If you do have a tree that is bearing bad fruit, you're not going to just keep picking the fruit off of the tree and then say the problem is solved. No, you need to question why the roots are producing fruit that is so bad. So likewise, with a certain issue, whether it be something political, something social, something in our relationships, we need to think a little bit deeper and question and ask ourselves why, even with things with ourselves, so that we can get to the root of the issue rather than just picking out the bad fruit. When we understand where a certain idea, where a certain concept, where a certain sinful habit or behavior comes from, then we are enabling ourselves to then attack it the best way possible, and then replace it with good fruit. And honestly, this is exactly how Jesus works with removing sinful habits out of our lives. A lot of us will have a testimony or a certain experience of, certain things being taken away, or, going through a season where, it seems like everything was being scooped up from the root of, honestly. And we wonder why, why is this? Why that? And it's because Jesus Jesus saw the sinful behavior. Jesus saw that thing that didn't reflect him. And then he saw the root of it and took it out from the root, because he wasn't just going after, the bad fruit itself. He was going after the cause of that bad fruit. Because if you only have a superficial perspective, we're only going to see superficial change. And, kind of just going back to things, regarding race, in my experience, asking this question why really does help a lot, because some people do have certain ideologies or ideas that they don't realize are flirting with racism in a sense. And I've had an experience with a friend where I asked them, why? Because they assumed that a certain group of people, they would need my help because I speak Spanish as well, and they thought they would need my help because they saw someone speaking Spanish amongst themselves. And I asked them, why would you assume that you would need my help? And then we had a discussion, and then he came to the conclusion himself that the idea that he had was kind of flirting with racism. And he was able to come to that conclusion because he thought about it superficially, but deeper, asking that question, why? And asking the question why also allows us to study scripture a lot deeper and get to know God a lot deeper, because we're not just taking the scripture at surface value. We want to know the reason behind certain things. We want to know why God does certain things. And even though we don't always receive an answer, we keep that heart that is curious to know is great, because then we're still always seeking more from God. So we can see that there's great power in the question why. And, let me know down below in the comments, do you agree that if it's one of the most powerful questions, or if you're on my page, that it is the most powerful question that you can ask yourself and others? And of course, as always, remember, you got this because God's got you. Peace out.